morning. My name is Lieutenant Colonel Andrew Thompson. I'm the commanding officer at Marine Aviation Logistics Squadron 13 in Yuma, Arizona. This is the first ever podcast for this organization, so we'll see how well it goes, but glad to be here today, especially with any type of insight or information I can pass along to help another Marine, particularly in our squadron. First thing I'm going to talk about today, or what my primary aims and objectives were, or are as a commanding officer. Then I'll talk a little bit about expectations for this organization. I'll talk a little bit about our leadership philosophy here, and then Gunnery Sergeant Heron and I will talk a little bit from an interview standpoint. But the first thing I wanted to talk about was my primary aims and objectives as a CO, and I thought long and hard about this. When I came out of Commander's course, that was Commandant-sponsored course in Quantico, many of the general officers encouraged us as prospective commanders to talk through, hey, what are a handful of things you want to accomplish while you're in command? These things are certainly have to uphold the Marine Corps expectation, standards, directives, orders, all those types of things. But fundamentally, what are the personal things you want to try to put on your command tour? And so I thought long and hard about that, and there were about 5 or 6 things that I thought were important based on my life experience, based on my military and Marine Corps experience. So my primary aims and objectives as a commander were the following. Number one, I wanted to uphold the national and Marine Corps trust to be good stewards of our country's precious human, material, and financial resources. The country right now is in a tough financial position. Our electorate, our voting populace should come to expect more from the Marine Corps. So I felt that it was important to uphold our trust, or the nation's trust, not just from the things that we have in our inventory, but most importantly, the sons and daughters that are entrusted to us, entrusted to our care by moms and dads, mothers and fathers and families in the United States. So that was number one. The second thing was to maintain Marine Corps standards. Marine Corps standards are very clear, they're explicit, they're easy to follow, but for all of us, the Marine Corps, if it tends to get off track, it's because we don't adhere to and remain grounded with our Marine Corps standards. So I felt maintaining Marine Corps standards was important. Next thing that was a primary aim and objective for me was to help Marines and sailors make good decisions. My grandfather taught my father, who in turn taught me, that as a teacher, as a coach, one of the most important things you can do is help people make more good decisions than bad ones. It's not real complex, but maybe it's one of those things that's simple, not easy. But as a CO, part of my charter, one of my primary aims and objectives, again, was to help Marines and sailors make good decisions. This next set of objectives here, or this next statement, is probably something that I've learned from coaches and teammates and fellow Marines and sailors and just great people in my life. It's to lead, to teach, to serve, and to hopefully mentor and have an influence on people at some stage of their journey. So again, leadership is an expectation for all of us as Marines. It's certainly an expectation for a commander. In many ways, teaching someone and sharing knowledge is important. Part of the responsibility of education is sharing it and passing it along to others. Service is big, regardless of what that service may be. It could be taking out the trash. It could be making an important choice on behalf of the institution or on behalf of the organization. And to mentor, meaning investing in our Marines, whether those are officers or junior enlisted Marines, or as we went the other day, our gunnery sergeants and our staff sergeants. So leading, teaching, serving, and mentoring. The next 2 primary aims and objectives, again, these were things that I felt were important, was to create an environment of competitive excellence, to show Marines what it takes to win. And I think a lot of people like to win, and they like to be on a winning team, but not everybody really knows exactly what that formula is or what it takes to give yourself a chance to win. So an environment of competitive excellence, and whether that's a martial arts training session, whether it's routing paperwork or documentation, whether it's talking to people, whether it's getting a couple Marines to compete against each other, or 2 divisions or 2 departments, harnessing the competitive spirit of Marines, there's a lot of power there. And if Marines can get to that point where they can compete, it gives them a chance to do really what they love to do and why they came in the Marine Corps. So again, creating an environment of competitive excellence and showing Marines and sailors what it takes to win. I felt that, and again, I learned this from my father, that making the unit a better place for the young Marines. Always want to try to reinvest in the future generation of our Corps, the future generation of leaders, whether those are non-commissioned officers or whether those are junior officers or prospective commanders at some point along the way, but to make the unit a better place for them. I think we've all been in units when we're young guys and we don't really see everything that's going on, but certainly when an older Marine takes an interest in us, I think that makes a difference. So again, making the unit a better place for the young Marines. And lastly, although it's not least important, is to leave the organization better than I found it. My grandfather was adamant about this, and over 40 years of public education, my father, very, very much the same. To wherever you go, whatever you do, try to leave with a little bit better situation behind you. And I hope that, when this is all said and done a year from now, that I'll be able to say that. I think I will be able to. I think we're on that track. But upholding the National and Marine Corps Trust, that's a big deal to me. Maintaining Marine Corps standards. I guess I'm reviewing now. Helping Marines and sailors make good decisions. Leading, teaching, service, and mentoring. Creating an environment of competitive excellence. And showing Marines what it takes to win. And the things it takes, or how important that is, and really, again, the how-to in terms of winning. Making the place better for the younger Marines and leaving the organization better than I found it. Again, those are things that's probably not an all-inclusive list, but a series of themes that I thought were important before I took command. And I thought long and hard about that, and hopefully all these things have come to pass in some way, shape, or form. We've got some growth in many of those areas, but I think, again, at the end of the command tour, I hope to be able to look myself in the mirror and say that we were able to emphasize there. I don't talk about those things publicly, but those are certainly a personal charter that I really are kind of my own personal guideposts in this command experience. So you can't go through this without being transformed, either as a Marine or as a leader, certainly as a man, but I felt those were important. Good morning, I'm LtCol Thompson, Commanding Officer at Marine Aviation Logistics Squadron 13, here in the lovely desert oasis of Yuma, Arizona. I talked a few moments ago about what my primary aims and objectives were as a commander, and I thought that those were important and the things that I wanted to put my personal stamp on when I took this job. In order to make those happen, I felt that there were two big areas that I wanted to emphasize as well, more publicly, in terms of leadership for our Marines. The first one was expectations. I've always liked working with people who are clear about what they expect, who are clear about what they want. And so I felt as a leader, I wanted our Marines to be clear on what was acceptable behavior from a personal standpoint, acceptable standards of work, acceptable performance in terms of our professional core of warriors. And I wanted to clarify expectations. So the first thing I do when new joined Marines come here, or even older Marines that transfer to us, whether those are enlisted Marines or officers, I like to talk to them about expectations. And I've thought a lot about this. Expectations are a two-way street. And fundamentally, I like to communicate, hey, this is what you can expect from me. And I like to share the story with our Marines that I come from a family of coal miners. I come from a family of teachers, coaches, and fundamentally that's really essentially who I am. I don't have a privileged upbringing. I can't really assimilate with other lines of work, although that doesn't make them not important. It's just there's a blue-collar nature to my family that is very meaningful to me. I failed to mention I come from a family of master carpenters and craftsmen as well. So I felt that, I tried to be able to have I'm not doing well here. I tried to have an expectation that based on who I am and where I come from, that I can hopefully try to meet you where you are and empathize with our Marines' position, or the plight of the working man. I don't know. But it's important to have an expectation that comes from the top to the rest of the members of the organization, but also that the members of the organization are clear on what is expected in return. So as a commander, I like to share with our Marines that I was screened and boarded by Headquarters Marine Corps. I was approved by the Commandant of the Marine Corps to take this job. It was a pretty thorough vetting process that looked at several years of my performance history and fitness reports and a great number of other things. So I certainly feel qualified and credentialed to do the job. I don't have all the answers. I feel like I'm competent at my job. And again, if I don't know the answers, I know where to go and find them. So our Marines should have a high level of expectation for their commander. They should have a very high expectation for their officers. And our officers are very clear about that. And our younger Marines should expect nothing less. Again, if I don't know, I'll find out. But Marines can expect from me, based on my background, that I'm qualified, competent, and capable. I'll bring my best every day. I'll try to be as enthusiastic as I can be. That's not always easy with sometimes the tough stuff that we do, but certainly I try to be consistent as possible. Whether we've had a great day or a bad day, I try to come through the door the same way. Now, expectations, again, are a two-way street. So when I look at the members of the organization, I ask two things of them. The first thing being, hey, nothing less than your best. People know when they're given an honest and sincere effort. We all know that. It's human nature to know. And people know when they're fooling themselves and when we're not giving our best effort. So I just ask our Marines, one, to give their best effort, nothing less than their best, and just to be honest about that. We all have bad days, but if we do have a bad day, you got to dust yourself off and come back and have a good day the next day. So again, the first thing, nothing less than your best, and the second thing was maintenance of Marine Corps standards. We don't need to invent anything new. We don't need to bring new programs into place. We don't need to create anything new. We just need to do a better job of what the Marine Corps' tried and true institutional standards are. That's it. Dozens and dozens and dozens of years of proven history in peacetime and wartime, in garrison stateside operations, and in very volatile combat. The Marine Corps standards has held us in good stead for our entire history. So again, I want people to know what they can expect from me. They should have high expectations of their commander, but I also want people to understand very clearly what I expect of them. And again, nothing less than their best. And the maintenance of Marine Corps standards. It's just that simple. Again, it's probably something that's simple but not easy, but that's really what I want people to be clear about. I don't know in my career if I've ever been very extremely clear on what my bosses have expected of me. Certainly some bosses are clearer than others. In fact, I like working for people that get angry, because when people get angry or they get pissed off, you know what's important to them. And so hopefully I was trying to get to a point where I could preempt that before either I would get upset or someone else would get upset for someone not meeting an expectation. So I wanted to clarify that. And then what I do is I like to talk about at least my personal leadership philosophy. There's been plenty of leadership philosophies in this business long before I came around, and there'll be plenty of good ones to come long after I'm gone. But again, this was a culmination of life events, collegiate athletics, Marine Corps, aviation, my upbringing at home, work, any number of things, family, and I thought there's probably three areas in my leadership philosophy that can benefit Marines. It's not a fail-safe, it's not perfect, but it's generally speaking something that I think Marines can use. Hopefully that it's practical advice and practical life advice. The first thing that I like to talk about is the first part of my leadership philosophy is essentially to keep your sense of personal honor clean. Character matters. If character is sound, if we get our personal character right, everything else falls in line. It's just that simple. I base that from the Marines' hymn, from the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. We will fight our country's battles in the air, on land, and sea. Marines are first to fight for right and freedom and to keep our honor clean. It's important. It's part of the spiritual health of our Corps. It's the organizational health here in our command climate. It's listed first because I do believe it's most important. If you look at institutional traits of honor, courage, and commitment, honor is first, and I think that's for a very specific reason. So here I tried to branch from there and say, hey, look, keep your honor clean. If we get our sense of personal honor clean, if character is right, we can get the maintenance right, we can get logistics right, we can get the supply right, we can get the finance right, I mean, whatever it is. So really I try to share some stories with Marines about that. As a young man, as a young officer, there were times when I didn't take that seriously. There were times based on my immaturity or based on my limitations or my short-sighted view on things that I didn't emphasize character as much as I should have. And so now that I've gotten older and I have children of my own, or my responsibilities have grown, I see that it's just that much more important. So that's why I try to emphasize that. Second thing, again, keep your honor clean. Second thing is just simply do what's right. I say do what's right because doing infers action. Action is a verb. I know a lot of people know what's right. A lot of people can choose what's right, but essentially I put doing what's right because that infers action, and certainly in action there is freedom. So I ask Marines all the time, what's an example of doing what's right? It's watching out for a buddy after hours. It's taking the extra steps to make sure your uniform looks correct. It's following through on a deadline. It's the extra torque value on the maintenance repair. It's, timely response to a customer's needs. I don't know exactly what it is, but doing what's right, it requires action from all of us. It's, again, there's an element of freedom in doing that I think if Marines think through that, it gives them a chance. It gives them a chance. And if I get the character right by keeping our honor clean, then we start doing some things, we're taking right action, it starts to give us a better chance to promote competitive excellence. As I think again to the third part of my leadership philosophy, again, it's three things. It's just simply being a professional. And Stephen Pressfield, the author of Gates of Fire and Tides of War and The War of Art and some other books, talks that amateurs play for fun and professionals play for keeps. And there's a big difference, a fundamental difference in amateurs and professionals. You know when things are essentially hastily put together, they're not well done, they're not well prepared, they're not well thought of, and certainly they're poorly executed. But when you see professionals, you can sense when people prepare, they think, they coordinate, they communicate, it's important to them, and it's evident in the execution. It's very, very evident in the execution. Professionals make each other better. And truthfully, professionalism indicates a high order of discipline in an organization. And again, the great irony of that is that the more professionalism, the more discipline, the more freedom there is in the organization. And a lot of people don't see it that way. But professionalism is certainly important. And when I piece those together, keeping your honor clean, doing what's right, being a professional, it's important for us older Marines to teach the younger Marines what that means, because it takes time to learn that. It takes time to hone that. It takes time to develop it. So when I look at character, we look at doing what's right, we look at professionalism, that's kind of a strand of three chords that's not easily broken. If a Marine genuinely gets those three things right, most of the time, I joke with a lot of our Marines and sailors that you'll live forever. If you get two out of the three, you've got a decent chance. Let's hope the character's right. If you get in one of the three, you're probably in trouble. Unfortunately, we had a Marine the other day that got all three wrong, so we had to take a stripe from him, unfortunately. But the bottom line, I like to be able to talk about that philosophically. I could with a senior officer if they were so inclined, or I could talk to a new PFC about it. Easy to understand. Keep your honor clean. Do what's right. Be a professional. It's just that simple. We post that in the squadron spaces. I talk to our young Marines about that. And hopefully it gives them something that they can refer to, remember, and use. So, again, expectations are important. They work two ways. They're certainly, at least they're designed to be clear from me or for each member of the organization. For the members of the organization, it's as simple as doing your best and maintaining Marine Corps standards. We've all learned that in indoctrination training, recruit training, officer training. And then a leadership philosophy that gives us a chance to live a life that is certainly free and clear of distractions. A life that hopefully allows us to perform at a higher level. So that was certainly the thought process that went into it, is we bridge this idea of knowing what we should be doing and then actually doing it. I think that requires some heavy lifting in the heavy business of leadership, but fundamentally that's the idea. So again, let me kind of talk through this a minute. I communicated my primary aims and objectives as a commander, expectations and leadership philosophy. This is the first podcast that's ever been done in this organization. I think we'll get better as we go, so I'll be the sacrificial lamb here, and we can laugh a little bit about this when we look back at this film later. But hopefully in some way there's some information or insights that helps our Marines. They can play it on their phone or on their iPad or on their workstation, that maybe a small unit huddle or a a hip pocket class of some sort. This helps somebody along the way. Maybe even a future commander, I don't know. But Gunny, did you want to ask some questions here? We could just kind of talk a little stream of consciousness. Might be a little easier.
Absolutely, sir. Some of the questions we had laid out were, personally, what were your deciding factors in choosing to become a Marine?
The deciding factors in me wanting to become a Marine were pretty clear. Fortunately, I had a chance to go to the Naval Academy Preparatory School in Newport, Rhode Island, and then on to the Naval Academy. As I look back on that, I'm still kind of scratching my head figuring how the heck I made it through, but it was a pretty easy and clear decision that I wanted to be a Marine, largely because of the Marines I was surrounded by. 2 corporals in my platoon at Naval Academy Preparatory School. Corporal Paul Whitey and Corporal Sean Stevenson were fantastic. They had been proven in the fleet. Sean had been in Desert Storm. He was phenomenal. Actually, an amazing life story, as well as a tragic loss of his brother Dion, who was killed in Desert Storm. So, and this was in the early 90s, right on the heels of Operation Desert Shield and Desert Storm. Those guys had a big influence on me, and you come into the Marine Corps and you meet a gunnery sergeant for the first time. A gunnery sergeant has a very effective way of getting people's attention. Gunnery Sergeant Sosa was the first gunny that I recall. Again, spit and polish guy. He had a presence much bigger than his physical stature. He was able to instill fear into people, healthy fear, not coercive or manipulative, but healthy fear to understand a purpose, a sense of urgency. And just being around those Marines, it was clear to me. And not that my Navy counterparts were not doing that. It was the uniforms. It was just how they carried themselves. There was just something, a camaraderie associated with who they were. It was very clear to me early on. The next year, I met a gentleman named Colonel McCormick, who was a graduate of the Naval Academy, who had been a tanker in his career. Graduated in the class of 1968 from the Naval Academy, was the senior Marine at the Naval Academy at that time, and gave me a chance. I was struggling academically. He told some of my leadership who was on my case. In some ways necessarily, in some ways unnecessarily, he told them to give me some space, and he allowed me to study on his porch on Sunday afternoons and gave me a chance. A wonderful dear man has since passed on. And then also Captain Chad Van Holzen, spit and polish guy, about 6'4", about 215 pounds, right out of a recruiting poster. An officer and a gentleman, very, very kind, understanding, listening ear. I was struggling academically. He helped me get some tutoring. For some reason, I missed the book bag issue, so I was carrying all my books around in a laundry bag, like Santa Claus with a bunch of books hefted over my shoulder. He got me a book bag. That was a big deal for a struggling young kid. I couldn't figure out which end was up most of the time, but I remember, again, those Marines were very influential on me. I still remember them and still am friends with all of them to this day. Very grateful for that.
What's been your favorite posting so far in the Marine Corps?
Favorite posting so far in the Marine Corps? Well, I probably, all things being equal, the command posting has been my favorite. Geographically speaking, Monterey, California has just an ever so slightly notch above Yuma, Arizona. I went to graduate school in Monterey and got an MBA there in 2004 and 2005. That was hard to beat. That was really sort of a sabbatical to kind of reassess everything and get back into for some head work and some learning. But it's hard to beat this. I mean, I have married, have a family now. And it's probably just much more rewarding because the span of influence and responsibility is that much greater. But you just get to be around so many great people. And that's just a joy for me. If we have unit events, I just sometimes pinch myself and step back and see the Marines having fun, doing great things. That's very enjoyable. So that's certainly most rewarding. I've had a few memorable postings, but probably to answer your question, the command posting here at MALS-13 in Yuma.
Where would you like to see yourself 10 years from now?
Where would I like to see myself 10 years from now? That's a pretty easy question. Independently wealthy and self-employed. I don't know if that's really. I know I want to get there. Independently wealthy from the standpoint that I'd hope to be able to create a world-class organization for people and give them opportunities, and to invest my time in things that certainly contribute to the greater good. whether that's national defense, whether that's local communities, schools, kids, sports, something that helps equip people for life. But also independently wealthy, so I've got some time to continue to invest with my family, certainly my marriage, but as well as my children, because our children will be our lasting legacy in my family. I certainly don't have a problem working for people. I don't have a problem with authority. I think I've been in the Marine Corps long enough to know that you got to take the good with the bad, but I do believe in the long run, 10 years from now, would most definitely intend to be self-employed, or at least be the chairman or president or CEO or founder, or I don't know, take out the trash guy. But I certainly, those are two things that I aim to achieve here in the next 10 years. Hopefully sooner than that, but we'll see. I think I still got some useful life left in the Marine Corps business.
Sir, if you could take one young Marine aside and just share one piece of advice with them, what do you think that would be?
Oh boy. If I could take one young Marine aside and share one piece of advice with them. Well, I get to do that every day. And sometimes I get to take more than one young Marine aside, and maybe fortunately or unfortunately for them, I share more than one piece of advice with them. But I guess I probably need to take a dose of my own medicine here, and that if I were able to pull one young Marine aside, wayward or stellar or meritorious or just an average performer, it would be just to reemphasize the number one part of my leadership philosophy, and that just take care of your character, man. Work on your character. Read, think, study, as far as building who you are as a human being. To be a trustworthy man or woman, that your word counts, that you intend to follow through with what you say you'll do. And again, that's easier said than done, but don't get careless with your character. Your sense of personal honor, it's a wellspring of life. And I think that if that is correct, then the rest of the stuff just tends to work itself out. Yeah, you certainly got to work at it, but that's what I would say to a young Marine. One piece of advice: just take care of your personal honor. Keep your honor clean, man. And that's what I would say to answer your question.